Welcome back to the Max Reality. If you've seen my face before, then you know the drill. But if you're new here, I love talking all things reality TV. And today, we are ending our journey with Shark Tank Season 16 with the season finale episode 20. AKA Mark's last episode, if you didn't know. If you've seen my more recent videos about this season, or if you keep up with Shark Tank news in general, you may know that this is Mark Cuban's very last season, which means this is his very last episode. And if I'm the one to break that news to you, I am so sorry, but this was his grand send-off. And as part of it, they showed a bunch of clips, good moments from him, blah, blah, blah. I can't play it all here for obvious reasons, but if you want to go see it, I definitely recommend going and checking it out on the episode because even I teared up a little bit. I love Mark Cuban. I love him on the show. And at the very end of it, they had a toast with the OG sharks, meaning Kevin, Barbara, Lori, Robert, Damon, and also Mark, of course. And they were all drinking Mark's favorite wine, Mad Dog 20. I've never had this before, but they were all drinking it for his final cheers, and I think this is the one they were drinking just based off color, so I am gonna try it for my very first time in honor of Mark going away. I have my very best glass for it, and we're gonna try it. I'm so worried that's gonna taste so bad just because of the reputation, and because I don't think this is gonna taste good, but Chevrolet du Testivan. We love you, Mark. We'll miss you. And I am only drinking this because of you. So cheers. It tastes like weird grape juice. Wouldn't expect anything less from my man, Mark Cuban. I honestly wanted to spend more time on this because I love Mark, but I don't know, I was being delusional. I was trying to ignore the fact that this was going to be his last episode, so I will probably dig more into him during my season 16, big final review that I usually do, but overall, I'm really going to miss Mark. I mean, you can say what you want about him, he's arrogant, he's blah, 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 but I love him on the show. I think he's a great entrepreneur on the show. And out of all the billionaires in the world, when it's time to eat him, I'll be the most sad about eating him. So, again, cheers to Mark. I hope him nothing but the best, as much as I can wish that for a billionaire. And here's to many more seasons of Shark Tank in the future.
Thank you.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Chevalier de Testament!
Our sharks for the episode are Barbara, Damon, Kevin, Lori, and of course, Mark Cuban in his final appearance. Our first pitch of the night is Big Ass Luxuries, and if me saying ass makes this video throttle because they're our first pitch, well, so be it. The entrepreneurs are Kelsey, Chloe, and Trent, and they came into the tank looking for $500,000 for 5% of their Big Ass Candle Company.
We're talking about candles, but not just any candles. Big Ass Candles!
So here it is. It's a giant candle. They have this big one that is 300 ounces and burns for 750 hours to 1,000 hours. Then what they call the baby one, and it's 150 ounces and burns from 300 to 500 hours.
$500,000 for 5% imputes a $10 million valuation. Yes. You better have some big ass sales.
Then we do get a sales breakdown. I am guessing the years, but I'm guessing the years they're talking about based on what they said. So they talked about their first full year of business, and I would assume that's 2022, based off everything they gave us, and that was $1.3 million. Then the next year, which again I would assume was 2023, they made $2.1 million. Then they told us year to date, which has to be 2024, based off when they filmed these things, was $2.4 million. and they were expecting to end the year at $4 million. And yes, we have a profitable company, even though I did not think that we would have that. They are expecting 20% of their margin this year, which would equal about $800,000 in profit, and they say that's about the same margin they had last year. So way better than I was personally expecting based off what we've gotten recently. As you can imagine, the very first question with a product like this is, what makes this different from any other big candle out on the market? And what they pretty much say is that, like, anyone can make a big candle, but they know how to market it. Their big thing is their branding and their marketing, and that is what is making them different from everybody else. We then have Damon come in once again to have to turn down a scent-based product because of competition. I thought it would be because of his partnership with the brand Aroma 360. That's what he talked about last time. But no, it's because him and his wife are the face, apparently, of a brand that's Hotel Collections, which is different candles, and because of that, it is competitive, and he has to go out. Then we have Mark, who talks about the fact that his idea of home decor is a upside down milk carton. So because of that, this isn't really the business for him. And while he loves Dallas-based entrepreneurs, unfortunately, he's out. We then have Lori, who wants to know where their price point falls within the competition, and they say if you can find a candle that's similar to their ounces, it's going to be 50% more expensive, which, of course, if you've seen my videos before, you know I had to take some time to look at, and that doesn't seem to necessarily be the case. I found one brand that does candles, like, in a general sense, and they had a bigger one that was similar to their, like, baby size that was a similar price point. And then I found a brand that's literally just, like, copy-paste their brand. I have no idea which one came first, but it literally is copy-paste their exact candle brand and the exact same prices. So, while it may have been true when they came into the tank, it doesn't seem to be the case as of now. And then they claim if a bigger player in the candle space wanted to do what they were doing, it would completely upend their business model, and they would have to make their smaller candles cheaper. And while, like, I understand what he's saying, I don't think I necessarily agree, because what I think he's saying, and I could 100% be wrong about this, is that if the bigger brands who did smaller candles at the more expensive prices tried to do the bigger ones, the price point, like, wouldn't math based on the ounces, and because of that, they would need to make the smaller candles cheaper to match, like, the big candle prices. I think that's what he's saying, but I could 100% be wrong. But, like, I personally did the math, and I get what he's saying, but I just don't think those, like, bigger candle brands would need to make their smaller candles cheaper. So again, to try to understand this completely, I went ahead and did the math, and I compared them to Bath & Body Works, since that's a very popular candle brand that I feel like a lot of people online were comparing this to. And if you take an average Bath & Body Works candle, it is $1.86 per ounce. And that is for a 14.5 ounce candle, which is going to cost you retail around $26.95. However, if you take the Big Ass Luxuries candle, it is around $1.19 per ounce, because their candle is 150 ounces at $179 per candle. So I feel like they're trying to say, like, the Bath & Body Works people would need to lower that price of their smaller candles. But I think a lot of, like, average consumers, if Bath & Body Works decided they wanted to go into the giant luxury space and make these big candles, if they were cheaper and in the line of the price point for like big ass luxury candles, I think a lot of people would see it as like, of course the ounces per price point is smaller because yeah, like it's one candle and like while there's a lot of ounces in it, it's only producing one. It's one thing of glass, it's one thing of candles, and I think people would accept that even if it was more expensive than the big ass luxury candles. I think they could do that without lowering their smaller candle price. So while I hear like the point they're trying to make, I don't necessarily think it's accurate. And while I maybe had some issues with their response to this and might have been digging deeper into all of this, Lori is all about it, saying she thinks she would be the perfect partner for them.
I think you are the perfect partner.
And this is when we get a great random lore drop from Lori. She informs us that she was one of the first people to bring those little like fragrance jars with little sticks hanging out. I'll put a picture up of them. But she was one of the first people to bring those to the American market, apparently, so she knows all about fragrance. But her big issue is the fact that they came in asking for $500,000 for 5%, which of course leads Kevin to asking them, why do they think they're worth the $10 million valuation?
That's a good question. I also think we're worth a lot more.
Yes, you do.
And their main response to this is to talk about their great sales that they've had. And at this point, Barbara jumps in to say that she agrees with Lori. If they had come in asking for less money, it would maybe be more appealing.
And also that Lori's not interested is concerning to me. I'm out.
No, I am interested.
Oh, you are? Wait, I'll go back in.
With that sentiment, Lori is ready to make an offer of her own, but it's not the one I feel like a lot of people are expecting. She decides to offer it half as equity and half as a loan. So she offers $250,000 as equity for 15%, and then the other $250,000 as a loan at market rates. But it doesn't stop there because Kevin is also interested, and he decides to make a very clean, just normal equity deal of $500,000 for 20%.
You got two offers. What do you want to do?
They take a moment to discuss among themselves and then decide to come back at Lori, seeing if she would keep the deal the same way she structured it, but lower the equity to 10%. And Lori is hearing it, but not super receptive, and she comes back at saying 14%. They then try countering again at 12%, but Lori is feeling herself today. She knows her worth, and she says the lowest she'll do it at is 13%, but she is not backing down. And then in what I would consider a very risky move, they go to Kevin and see if he would lower his equity ask to 10%. Of course, he immediately shuts that down, so they take a minute to discuss among themselves, and they decide to take the deal with Lori, where half of it is $250,000 at 13% equity, along with a $250,000 loan at market rates. First things first, while I would never, as an entrepreneur, be like chomping at the bits to take a deal from Kevin, it does feel very wild to me that Lori was offering practically half the valuation that Kevin was offering, and they were still just like, whatever, it's fine. Lucky for them, it seems like they're the only people who have really like put money into this. It doesn't seem like they have like outside investors making valuations on the company. So they're able to take deals like this, but it is just like very wild in the overall scheme of things because literally Lori was asking them for about like half the valuation that Kevin was, but it's hard to see it like that when you're looking at Shark Tank deals because you aren't really like necessarily like seeing all of those numbers play out, and if they don't put it up there for you, it can be hard. But literally like Kevin was offering them $500,000 for 20%, And while Lori is giving them the same amount of money, she is only offering that equity on half of the amount of money, which does ultimately lower their valuation, which can matter just depending on the type of business it is. Luckily, it doesn't seem to have mattered for them, but it's just a very, wild concept in Shark Tank in general. Then, of course, we have to go back to the point of, other candle brands doing this and it being 50% more expensive if somebody else wanted to do this. Like I was saying earlier, I found number one, just a normal candle brand that's out there that happens to have a bigger one, and it is in the similar price point as this brand. And then on top of that, I found what felt like a super copy paste of Big Ass Luxuries. I have no idea which came first, but literally they seem like copy pastes of each other. And the main point, no matter who came first, is that the price points seem to be the same. It seems like they only have the baby size. So Big Ass Luxuries is winning on their bigger size, but they even pointed out that their smaller candle seems to be their hero product. So if other candle brands can capitalize on that smaller giant candle, it may become an issue for them in the long run. At the end of the day, would I buy a giant candle this size? No. I'm just not the demographic for this. I love switching out scents based on the season. I also love just buying super cheap grocery store candles to keep my house smelling nice during different holidays. So no, I'm not necessarily the demographic for this. I also just have no clue, because I was thinking, oh, what if I bought one of these for a YouTube review video? But genuinely, where do you keep a candle that big? Where do you put it? I have no idea. I'm just not the target market for this. If you are, though, I would love to hear your opinions on this, because I have seen people talking about this. But ultimately, I'm just not the demographic for this at the end of the day. Our second pitch of the night is Deviled Egg Company. Alexi and Rachel walked into the tank looking for $150,000 for 5% of their unique deviled egg restaurant.
I love deviled eggs. Love
Very
them.
good.
So do I.
Here it is. How it works is their main sales come from an actual restaurant where you come in and place your order for very unique deviled eggs in lots of different varieties of flavors. You order them, grab and go. They also have a shipping component where you can order them to yourself, but the main idea is getting deviled eggs to go from a restaurant. For the cost breakdown, we get their pack of 6, which they say is the average order per customer. And for that 6-pack, it costs them $1.81 to make and retails anywhere from $14.99 to $79.99. And while I don't know exactly when they started business, I would guess 2021, because as I love, we get a little sales ramp. In 2021, they only did $60,000 in sales, but in 2022, they jumped all the way to $395,000 in sales. 2023, they jumped to $492,000. And year-to-date in 2024, they had done $705,000 and were expecting to hit $1.3 million. And yes, I'm sure you're all wondering this. This apparently is a profitable company. However, the numbers did very much confuse me personally. So when they got asked about profitability, their exact answer is they're projecting $350,000 to $380,000 in revenue, but generally revenue would be a smaller number than sales, and their sales are expected to hit 1.3 million. This could be a multitude of different things. They could have just misspoke. It could be an editing issue. I don't know, but this is something that made me stop and like reevaluate my notes for a lot of amount of time. So I had to bring it up. And off of that revenue, they say they're going to put $50,000 to their bottom line, which would be their profit, which is great considering what they tell us is that that newest store that they ended up opening for themselves because they've started doing brick and mortar stores was $50,000. So after a year, they're already seeing a return on investment, which is great, but ultimately it was a little muddied for me when I was looking at the numbers because I am just a little unclear on everything. Again, might not be their fault, might be an editing issue, maybe they misspoke. Who's to say? Not me. If you're a longtime Shark Tank viewer, or if you love critical thinking skills, you're probably wondering, how are they going about selling this? And they let us know that at first they were selling this out of a food trailer to try to prove out the concept. And once they saw people liked it, they moved into a brick and mortar location, trying to do the whole like full service restaurant idea. And quickly they learned that that's not really their niche and moved into the more grab and go space, which has definitely helped to grow their business. Unfortunate side note I have to bring up, one of their first main locations they talk about was in Nebraska, and it seems like that location is permanently closed. As I was saying earlier, there's the two main founders, Rachel and Alexis, and Rachel talks about how she moved from the Nebraska area to Denison, Texas, and there is a location there, so I'd assume the Nebraska location closed just because she moved. I have no idea though, because they don't really talk about Alexis at all, so I have no idea where like she resides or like necessarily how they came together as a team. Who's to say? I don't know. All I know is, while that Nebraska location is gone, there are 3 locations in the greater DFW area, so I guess you win some, you lose some. We then have Damon jump in, and I personally get to find out that he's just like me, a fellow deviled egg lover, and he gives them this great high compliment.
I gotta tell you, this is probably the best thing I've ever eaten in 16 years on this stage. I've eaten a lot of stuff.
Not as much as I have.
While Damon does love the product, ultimately it's not in his area of expertise and he decides to go out. We then have Barbara, who wants to know how they're planning to expand the business. You can imagine this is because Barbara's wondering about franchise opportunities, since that's like her bread and butter, and they say they're trying to use the $150,000 to open 2 more company stores, but they do have people who have come to them who are interested in the franchising model. We then have Kevin, who starts like trying to tear into their valuation and the fact that they're wanting to do franchising until we get this moment.
If this concept sticks, and I think it can.
I know it can. Can I take the floor for just a moment?
And truly, once these people started talking about their business, especially when they got into the numbers and sales, I knew Barbara would be all over this for a franchising opportunity. And she ultimately starts comparing this business to one of her previous Shark Tank investments called Crispy Cones. It was from a couple years back. It's an ice cream business, but ultimately they're very similar of doing a very unique food niche product. So she decides to offer them $150,000 for 15%. She gets the 15% because that's what she gave to Crispy Cones and also Cousin's Maine Lobster, which is another huge Shark Tank investment for Barbara, especially in the franchising model. And because of that, she feels very good with the 15% and honestly, like, iconic. I love that she's like, that's my ideal number. That's when we're like hitting money. Good for her. Never change. This is a side tangent, but I don't know when else to insert this. Because of this pitch, I started looking at Crispy Cones more from a couple years ago, and I found one and I saw the location address and I was like, oh, that's not super far. Like, maybe I could go to that for a video. And then I actually put it in and it was like maybe an hour or so away. And I said, oh. But maybe one day we'll get that Crispy Cones review. It is closer than I ever thought it would be, so you know. So while the entrepreneurs are very happy that Barbara has made them an offer, they say very gently that they want to be respectful of the other sharks and hear, if any of them have any other offers. That's not exactly how they say it. It's very gentle, and lucky for them, Barbara's in a mood where she's not about to immediately snatch her offer off the table. I do think, again, it's because how gently and respectfully they brought it up, but you never know in the tank. Somebody can bring it up as respectfully as they want, and a shark's not in the mood and immediately takes their offer off the table. So lucky for them, that wasn't the case here. So then we go to Lori, who starts giving the spiel about how much she loves the product, but does she have to invest in every product she loves, or can she just be a good customer? And at this point, I so deeply wanted to get a very good pan to Mark, because Mark is so known for, at this point, especially in the last couple years, just investing in a random product just because he likes it. But c'est la vie, we don't really get it. Anyway, with all that said, she decides she will be a great customer, but ultimately at this time, as for an investment, she is out. We then have Kevin, who very surprisingly to me, is interested in this business and decides to offer them $150,000 for 20%. The big caveat, though, is that he doesn't really agree with Barbara. He doesn't see this as a franchise model, and that's not the way he would go with them trying to grow their business. They rebuttal to him talking about the shipping aspect of their business and ask if he'd be interested in putting that side of their business on his different social media platforms.
I'm not feeling love,
No,
ladies.
and
asking
I'm looking at you.
questions.
We've got your love, yes.
And of course, we still have Mark, who to this point hasn't really chimed in, but now decides to say that he really loves the product.
You better not compete with me, my dear Mark.
Mark ultimately agrees with Barbara that he doesn't want to go up against her, so he counters that they should go in together. However, he really thinks 20% would be the best number if they're going in together, and even talks to the entrepreneurs, saying that he'd be willing to give more money to get them at that 20%, and asks what they'd be comfortable with. So they decide to counter both Barbara and Mark $250,000 for 20%, which luckily the pair agrees with, and they end up making the deal. First things first, I thought this was a very fitting deal to be on Mark's farewell episode, because all the way back in season 4, both him and Barbara invested in a company called Tom and Chi. Very similar idea of a niche food product, except this happened to be grilled cheese, but same idea. They were very niche, that's what they were doing. However, after looking into this, I hope the Deviled Egg Company doesn't have the same fate, because with Tom and Chi, ultimately Mark didn't end up following through with the deal because he felt like they should be focusing more on company-owned stores instead of the franchise model. But Barbara ended up doing a deal with them by herself to do franchise models, and they are still around today. They weren't as successful as maybe they were a couple years after Shark Tank, but they still exist. But nonetheless, I thought this was a very fitting way to end, because it matched up with the early days of Mark, and we love to see it. So on to my personal opinion. I'm super biased. I'm like Damon. I love deviled eggs. I love them. I remember back in the day, 10-ish. Oh, that's dating me. It doesn't matter. I went to a restaurant that was a fancy restaurant in my college town, and they had 3 fancy deviled eggs as an appetizer, and I was like, oh, this is the height of luxury. So personally, I'm biased. I love the idea, and I'm not trying to promise anything, but I was looking up where their locations were, and there's a slight possibility I may be able to go to one of them by the end of the year, as long as they're still there and nothing has happened. So no promises, but if I can get there, I will be going there, and if I do, I will let y'all know. I love deviled eggs. So the minute all of them were like, this is so good, especially Damon being like, this is the best thing he's eaten in 16 years. Y'all know if I can get there, I'm gonna get there. But I'm not willing to ship them to myself because I was reading that, like, if you ship them to yourself, as you would imagine with a product like this, you're gonna have to assemble it yourself, and ultimately it's just not the same product, so I really don't want to try this unless I can go to a restaurant. And personally, again, I'm super biased because I love eggs and deviled eggs, but if I had one near me, I could see myself getting this as a little treat, as a little snack once a month. So I definitely see it. Very niche food products like this are popular if you can get a good enough, like, cult following for them. So I wish them nothing but the best, especially because I would love one nearer to me than the nearest one, which is a couple hours. But again, if I can get to that one, like I think I can, y'all will be the first to know about it. Our third pitch of the night is Tick Mitt. Steve and Olivia walked into the tank looking for $250,000 for 10% of their mitt that helps to remove ticks before they latch on. Here's what it looks like, and how it works is it uses the same technique that Velcro uses, which is hooks and loops. The tick is, in this case, the hook, and their mitt is a special made patented microfiber with specific loop sizes that are supposed to be optimal for catching loose ticks on the skin. Before they start getting deep into the numbers, they talk about the fact that they went to a trade show this year, and out of 137 different submissions, they ended up winning Innovation Product of the Year, which ended up leading to 70 different conversations with big box retailers across the US.
Which means you're ready to talk about the business.
Yes.
Right.
The mitt cost them $2.15 landed, and it retails for $19.99. They tell us they've been in business 18 months, and their lifetime sales are $432,000. Year to date in 2024, they had done $252,000. Unfortunately, though, we do not get to find out if they're profitable or not. However, we do know that the dad, Steve, has put in $600,000 of his own money into the business. So a lot of the beginning portion of this pitch is talking about how ticks work in, like, a general sense. And if you're super interested in all that, I definitely recommend just, like, going and checking out this episode. But from all of this, we get a great quote out of Mark.
I never really wanted to know this much about ticks.
And, like, absolutely same, my brother. I hate ticks. It's one of my, like, irrational fears. I know it's not irrational, but it's not, like, super prevalent where I am, and it's not like I go into the deep woods at all, but getting a tick on me or my dog and getting Lyme disease is definitely top 5 of my main fears in life. And if you watch my videos, you know I don't usually get into the backstories of entrepreneurs, but in this case it's super relevant since Olivia is my, like, exact fear. Pretty much Olivia got a tick on her, ended up getting Lyme disease, like, didn't know what was wrong with her for a while. Luckily, they caught all of it early enough, it seems, that she's making a very good and fruitful recovery, but ultimately that's one of my top fears, and that is part of how her and her dad got into this idea of, like, tick removal prevention sort of business. And since I'm talking about it anyway, the last little point of their backstory I'm gonna bring up is the fact that her dad actually bought the famous Magnolia Bakery in New York. If you know, you know. He bought it from the original owners and then eventually ended up selling it because ultimately he is, like, a serial entrepreneur. Kevin then jumps in to point out that their valuation of $2.5 million doesn't really math based on the different numbers they give us, and their reasoning for defending the $2.5 million valuation is the fact that they have patents and the fact that they've filed IP in different places like Great Britain and the EU. And with that, they're about to launch in 15 different companies. So ultimately, they're making the value based off what they see this brand be coming in the future. They then get back on the idea of trade shows, talking about that the one they went to went so well that they want to keep investing in that, and they have 10 more shows lined up. Of course, then we have Kevin pointing out that, like, they can't just keep doing trade shows, and maybe they should focus on things like social media to help get this in front of people. And their response is that they have a pretty low follower count on social media, but they do get quite a few impressions from the different videos they post, so it kind of offsets that. But personally, I agree with Kevin. They probably should start trying to ramp that up, along with the trade shows if they want to do that. But, like, that definitely seems like a space where they could be excelling. Then we have Mark, who says he wants to start us off, aka start us off in terms of sharks either making offers or going out. And he starts to go out, and with that gives us this great line.
Let me just tell you guys, wherever there's ticks, I'm going the opposite direction.
Absolutely same, Mark. I completely feel it, but unfortunately that means he's out. We then have Lori, who a couple of years back on Shark Tank invested in a company called Bug Bite Thing, and they've been wanting to get into the tick space, and because of that, that would make this competitive with them. So unfortunately, she has to go out. Then we have Damon, who thinks it's a great product, but wonders how much people would actually use it. And because of that, he's also out. But hope is not lost, because we then have Barbara, who says she's their perfect tick girl. We then find out that Barbara apparently almost lost her son to Lyme disease, so this very much hits close to home for her. And with that, she decides to offer them $250,000 for 30%. They then try countering at 20%, but Barbara sees this company and knows that something like this is going to take a lot of effort and work on her part, so she decides to stay firm at the 30%. But wait, there's more. We also have Kevin, who's surprising to me, is interested, but his big worry is about how to get his money back, and if you know Kevin, you can probably guess where this is going next. He decides to offer them a royalty deal. He offers them $250,000 for 20% with a $1 a unit royalty until, okay, now this is the moment where Kevin's being a little generous. You might have heard that and immediately filled in the blanks with in perpetuity, but no, he decides instead of in perpetuity, he wants the royalty until he's paid back $2 million, which again is not forever. So generous. However, the entrepreneurs aren't excited about Kevin's deal at all and pretty much turn it down without even countering. And then Barbara comes in to be like, so, we said no to my deal at 30%, which they then try countering Barbara at 25%. But again, she is staying firm at that 30%. And unfortunately, because of that, the entrepreneurs end up leaving the tank without a deal. To start off, I saw a lot of back and forth about, like, if they should have taken the deal, if they shouldn't have, but ultimately at the end of the day, only they know their business. I'm sure they came in with, like, a certain percentage they were willing to go down to, and if it wasn't met, I get it. I get why they wouldn't want to make that deal. And ultimately, I hope it all worked out how they wanted it to work out. As far as the product itself goes, as I said earlier, I have a huge fear of ticks. So if this works, like, great for them. I hope it works. I hope it helps people. Again, I'm not really in an area where ticks are actually as, like, concerning as, like, they could be. More so, especially because of my lifestyle rather than, like, where I am. Maybe if I was going in the woods more, if I was hiking more, it'd be a bigger thing. But still, even as a very suburban person, it's one of my big fears. So if it can help people, I think that's fantastic. Because, as she was talking about, Lyme disease is very damaging. It can be life-altering, so if you can prevent it, that's great. And if they're helping people with that, at the end of the day, who am I to criticize? I hope they continue to do well. I hope this works as well as it says it does. Because again, I, like Mark, hate ticks. Never want to think about them again. Moving on. Our fourth and final pitch of the night is Stringys. Olivia and Elvira walked into the tank looking for $300,000 for 5% of their seamless thong underwear.
Can't wait to try them on.
Here it is. I feel like it's very self-explanatory, especially for the women demographic. It is a thong designed to look completely seamless, as if you're wearing nothing under your different clothing items. The thongs cost them $2 to make and retail for $14. They've been in business 11 months and have had lifetime sales of $180,000. Unfortunately, we don't get to hear if this company is profitable, but we do get to hear about money invested, and that is that they've raised $400,000 at a $10 million valuation.
At a $10 million
Yes.
Damn.
One of the very first questions out of the gate is, do they have this patented? And they do have a patent pending. They talk about the fact that the way they have these materials bonded together is unique in its own right and is what makes this product better than anything else on the market. Aside from having that patent pending on the actual unique materials, they say there's a lot of value in the brand name itself because they have famous people actually asking for this brand by name. Barbara wants to know what they're planning to use the money for, and they say what they need it for is for placing bigger POs, so they're not in a constant state of being sold out. On top of that, they're projecting to do $1.8 million, and part of that is just based on the sheer demand for this product. We then have Kevin, who can see that this is working, but ultimately just feels like their valuation is ridiculous, and he decides to give his famous line about the fact that he won't even get out of bed for 5%.
Problem.
What will get you out of bed?
But Kevin decides to give them an offer of $300,000 for 5%, plus a royalty of $1 a unit. And now for what I'm pretty sure is the second time this season, Kevin calls back to his investment in a company called Rounderbum a couple years ago. Pretty much it was a company that was underwear that helped enhance male features, for lack of a better word. And because of that, he does have some experience in the underwear space. We then have Damon come in quickly to say ultimately it's all just too high for where they are in sales, and while he wishes them luck, he's out. And then we have Barbara, who is on fire with the questions. Very obvious that she might be interested, and she asks what they actually need a shark for. And again, they just go back to the fact that they need help placing bigger POs. After that, we have Lori come in to say that she feels like Kevin would be the best shark for them because of his knowledge in the underwear space, and because of that, she's out. Then we get Mark, who doesn't feel like he'd be able to help them enough and feels like they're gonna go far regardless, and because of that, he's also out. And surprise, surprise, Barbara is interested and has finally gotten enough answers to her different questions, and she decides to offer them $300,000 for 10%. And then the two of them are about to take a minute for themselves when Olivia decides to burst out and inform us that the money they raised earlier is in a safe, and because of how all of that works, if they take anything in this raise less than a $10 million valuation, theoretically, there'd be less shares of equity to give the different sharks. And I'm not going to spend time really getting into what a safe is. I'm going to link a video if you want to understand more of that. But the point is, how their safe works is it's going to convert on their first raise, no matter what that first raise is. And ultimately, that's going to be this in the tank, which is why all of this is extra important. So while I understand their safe and their dilemma, what I don't understand is the fact that they were talking about if they do something less than a $10 million valuation, it'll be a big deal. But what they came in asking for was less than a $10 million valuation. I don't know if they were planning in due diligence or later to say that some of that percentage was going to be advisory shares or what they were going to do about that. I just thought it was funny to be it needs to be a valuation of 10 million or more when that's not even what you came in asking for. But anyway, Kevin hears them out about the issues with their safe and decides he's willing to take the hit equity-wise and offer them $300,000 for 3%, which would get them to the valuation, but he's only willing to do that if he gets to keep his dollar royalty in perpetuity. And then we have Olivia, who really starts trying to break down the math for him about how much that's gonna take out of their profit. And iconic. Good for her. She was right. We love somebody who knows their numbers. But then with that, they try countering him $300,000 for 3%, with his royalty being 22 cents a unit in perpetuity.
What is the thinking on the 22 cents, though? Just that's a number?
Do you like it?
And ultimately, it does seem like they had some deeper reasoning behind the 22 cents, but they kept getting cut off. And ultimately, I love pretending that they were just 22 cents. Take it or leave it. Hilarious. Do you like it? I love it. Kevin then says he wouldn't be willing to go all the way down to 22 cents, but he would be willing to go down to 50 cents, when out of nowhere, Barbara says she'll take the offer that they just gave to Kevin with the 22 cents in perpetuity. And instead of just immediately saying yes, they decide to try countering her again, and Olivia totally takes this moment over, and she asks Barbara if she'd be willing to do the royalty until she's paid her money back. Along with that, they would give her an additional 3% advisory shares.
3%? Yes.
However, this episode, Barbara is staying firm and consistent with her boundaries on different offers, and she says she wants to stay firm at the 22 cents in perpetuity. They then take a moment to themselves to discuss, and they decide to counter her $600,000 for 6% with the 22 cent royalty in perpetuity, which she just immediately turns down. Not a second thought, not a counter. Then, in a move that felt very random and out of nowhere, Kevin decides to reiterate the offer he'd be comfortable making them, which again is $300,000 for 3% with the 50 cent royalty in perpetuity. But again, the women just aren't interested in this offer at all and decide to counter Barbara. And the counter they end up making her, I kid you not, is $300,000 for 3% with a 22 cent royalty in perpetuity. AKA the offer they gave to Kevin earlier that Barbara jumped in on and said she'd be willing to do with them. You can tell when they said this to her, she took a minute to process it, being like, didn't I already? But in the end, Barbara says yes, and they end up doing the deal for $300,000 for 3% with the 22 cent royalty in perpetuity. So first of all, talking about the product and the deal, I do get kind of why Barbara might be interested in this. It's always interesting to see the people that she's like, oh yeah, I love this, and other people where she's like, you make no sense, but they're blonde, they're women, they're making money, it seems. So I saw Barbara being interested in this. Even though we didn't get to hear the profit margin, I could see that Barbara was like, I think I could make money from this. So ultimately it makes sense because she loves especially investing in entrepreneurs. So if she likes you personally and thinks you can keep building businesses, she tends to like to try to make those investments. As far as the product itself goes, I do not think this is one y'all will be hearing me make a video of trying it out. Ultimately, it's just not really a product for me. I'm not really the demographic, the target market of who they're looking for. Maybe 10 years ago I was, but just not anymore. And also on top of that, when I was on their Instagram and their website in general, just looking at photos of people in these, I didn't see anybody. Mostly the founders are the people who are in the marketing images for all this, and they are so skinny. And personally, as somebody who is bigger, who's not just a super stick thin model, while they says this doesn't ride up or roll up or do any of that stuff, I haven't seen any pictures of anybody who's not a size 2 or under wearing this. So I don't have proof in my mind. I can't say it can't work for you. I have no idea, but I personally have not seen it. I would need them to prove that to me first. However, while I was looking through all their Instagram and stuff, one of their founders, not Olivia, the other one, Elvira, was wearing this while she was pregnant, and I wish I could get her honest opinion about what wearing this while pregnant was like, but I don't think we'll ever get that since this is her company. But again, until I see someone more my body size wearing this, I just don't see this really working for people who aren't stick thin. I could be wrong, but they'll have to prove that to me because I'm not going to try to prove that for them. And while it's not a product for me at the end of the day, I definitely will be keeping my eye on this because I want to see if this like super blows up on different social media platforms. They said they were on them and they do have big celebrities like the Jenners wearing them and so forth. But anything I saw, especially on TikTok, was people who were paid to review it. And I saw some stuff on Instagram, and that seems to be their bigger platform. But ultimately, like I said, I didn't see just like a lot of just like normal reviews. So I'll be interested to see how this one goes. Is this just a flash in the pan influencer brand, or is it here to stay? And y'all, that's a wrap. Not only on season 16, episode 20, but season 16 of Shark Tank as a whole and Mark Cuban's final season. If you made it this far in the video, and if you've made it this far in the whole series of Shark Tank season 16, if you've gone through all of them, seriously, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. I'm gonna miss Shark Tank when we're on the off season, but it'll be back before you know it. As always, I want to hear your thoughts, feelings, opinions, comments, all that and more down below. If you like Shark Tank recaps, those won't be happening again until probably the fall. Shark Tank product reviews, those will be coming up. And reality TV in general, which is always here, check out the channel and subscribe. It is a good time over here. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it down below. And until then, I'll see y'all in the next one.